The Urantia book, section 3, the history of Urantia, paper 88, fetishes, charms and magic. The concept of a spirit entering into an inanimate object, an animal or a human being, is a very ancient and honorable belief, having prevailed since the beginning of the evolution of religion. This doctrine of spirit possession is nothing more nor less than fetishism. The savage does not necessarily worship the fetish, he very logically worships and reverences the spirit resident therein. At first, the spirit of a fetish was believed to be the ghost of a dead man. Later on, the higher spirits were supposed to reside in fetishes, and so the fetish cult eventually incorporated all of the primitive ideas of ghosts, souls, spirits, and demon possession. 1. Belief in fetishes. Primitive man always wanted to make anything extraordinary into a fetish. Chance therefore gave origin to many. A man is sick, something happens, and he gets well. The same thing is true of the reputation of many medicines and the chance methods of treating diseases. Objects connected with dreams were likely to be converted into fetishes. Volcanoes, but not mountains, became fetishes. Comets, but not stars. Early man regarded shooting stars and meteors as indicating the arrival on Earth of special visiting spirits. The first fetishes were peculiar marked pebbles, and so-called sacred stones have ever since been sought by man. A string of beads was once a collection of sacred stones, a battery of charms. Many tribes had fetish stones, but few have survived, as have the Kaaba and the stone of scone. Fire and water were also among the early fetishes, and fire worship, together with belief in any holy water, still survives. Tree fetishes were a later development, but among some tribes the persistence of true nature worship, led to belief in charms indwelled by some sort of nature spirits. When plants and fruits became fetishes, they were taboo as food. The apple was among the first to fall into this category. It was never eaten by the Levantine peoples. If an animal ate human flesh, it became a fetish. In this way, the dog came to be the sacred animal of the Parsis. If the fetish is an animal and the ghost is permanently resident therein, then fetishism may impinge on reincarnation. In many ways, the savages envied the animals. They did not feel superior to them and were often named after their favorite beasts. When animals became fetishes, there ensued the taboos on eating the flesh of the fetish animal. Apes and monkeys, because of resemblance to man, early became fetish animals. Later, snakes, birds, and swine were also similarly regarded. At one time, the cow was a fetish, the milk being taboo, while the excreta were highly esteemed. This is still going on in India. Certain days of the week were fetishes. For ages, Friday has been regarded as an unlucky day. and the number 13 as a so-called evil number. The lucky numbers 3 and 7 came from later revelations. 4 was the lucky number of primitive man and was derived from the early recognition of the 4 points of the compass. It was held unlucky to count cattle or other possessions. The ancients always opposed the taking of a census, such as, between quotation marks, numbering the people. What is being spoken of in the Bible? One day David had to number his people, and a so-called devil in the name of Satan had said this to him to do so. So it's all based on fetishism and ghost worship. The Saliva was a potent fetish. Devils could be driven out by spitting on a person. For an elder or superior to spit on one was the highest compliment. Parts of human body were looked upon as potential fetishes, particularly the hair and nails. The long growing fingernails of the chiefs were highly prized, and the trimmings thereof were a powerful fetish. Belief in skull fetishes accounts for a much later day head hunting. The umbilical cord was a highly prized fetish. Even today it is so regarded. In Africa, mankind's first toy was a preserved umbilical cord to set with pearls, as was often done. It was man's first necklace. Hunchbacked and crippled children were regarded as fetishes. Lunatics were believed to be moonstruck. Primitive man could not distinguish between genius and insanity. Idiots were either beaten to death or revered as fetish personalities. Hysteria increasingly confirmed the popular belief in witchcraft. Epileptics often were priests and medicine men. Drunkenness was looked upon as a form of a spirit possession. When a savage went on a spree, he put a leaf in his hair for the purpose of disavowing responsibility for his acts. Poisons and intoxicants became fetishes. They were deemed to be possessed. Many people looked upon geniuses as fetish personalities possessed by a wise spirit, and these talented humans soon learned to resort to fraud and trickery for the advancement of their selfish interests. A fetish man was thought to be more than human. He was divine, even invaluable. 2. Evolution of the fetish. It was a supposed preference of ghosts to indwell some object which had belonged to them when alive in the flesh. This belief explains the efficacy of many modern relics. The ancients always revered the bones of their leaders, and the skeletal remains of saints and heroes are still regarded with superstitious awe. By many, even today, pilgrimages are made to the tombs of great men. Belief in relics is an outgrowth of the ancient fetish cult. The relics of modern religions present an attempt to rationalize the fetish of the savage and thus elevate it to a place of dignity and respectability in the modern religious system. It is heathenish to believe in fetishes and magic, but supposedly all right to accept relics and so-called miracles. The fireplace became more or less of a fetish, a sacred spot. The shrines and temples were at first fetish places because the dead were buried there. The fetish hut of the Hebrews was elevated by Moses to that place where it harbored a super fetish, the then existent concept of the law of God, but the Israelites never gave up the peculiar Canaanite belief in stone altars. And this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall be God's house. They truly believed that the spirit of their God dwelt in such stone altars, which were in reality fetishes. The earliest images were made to preserve the appearance and memory of the illustrious dead. They were really monuments. Idols were a refinement of fetishism. The primitives believed that a ceremony of consecration caused the spirit to enter the image. Likewise, when certain objects were blessed, they became charms. Moses, in the addition of the second commandment to the ancient Dalmatian moral code, made an effort to control fetish worship among the Hebrews. He carefully directed that they should make no sort of image that might become consecrated as a fetish. So we can say that the modern selfies, idolizing yourself before others, is actually also a form of fetishism. He made it plain, Moses, you shall not make a graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters of the earth. While this commandment did much to retard art among the Jews, it did lessen fetish worship. But Moses was too wise to attempt suddenly to displace the olden fetishes, and therefore consented to the putting of certain relics alongside the law in the combined war altar and religious shrine, which was the ark. So the ark is a religious shrine and actually also belongs to fetishism. And here it comes. This is the most important piece of information of this whole paper. 88. Listen carefully. Words eventually became fetishes, more especially those which were regarded as, between quotation marks, God's words. In this way, the sacred books of many religions have become fetishistic prisons. And this is why God the Father is constantly saying that we need to grow beyond the Bible, apocryphal books and pseudo-apocryphal books, theologic books and whatsoever books that men is proclaiming as holy. So again, words eventually became fetishes, more especially those which were regarded as, between quotation marks, God's words. In this way, the sacred books of many religions have become fetishistic prisons. Fetishistic prisons, incarcerating the spiritual imagination of man. What is the book, the Bible? That's a fetish book. It imprisons humans, the human soul especially. The humans are not realizing that they are imprisoning their soul by staying stuck on a book that is already so outdated and so incorrect and so distorted. Moses is very effort against fetishes became a supreme fetish. He himself became a supreme fetish. His commandment was later used to stultify art and to retard the enjoyment and adoration of the beautiful. To be creative, to be artistic is actually also you that allows the creative energies to express themselves through you in the creation of making art. Art is a part of God. It shows the beauty of life, so to say, and the beauty of the Creator through each one of us. And this resulted that the Jewish people, until the day of today, are still avoiding arts. So Moses in actuality killed actually that part. So that's why you see those people so focused on the Torah, the so-called law, and still are saying to their children that they are not really allowed to be in any way, shape or form artistic. In olden times, the fetish word of authority, was a fear-inspiring doctrine, and it's exactly what you read in the Bibles. The whole Old Testament is fear-inspiring doctrine. There's so much fear added into each book. The most terrible of all tyrants, which enslave men. A doctrinal fetish will lead mortal man to betray himself into the clutches of bigotry, fanaticism, superstition, intolerance, and the most atrocious of barbarous cruelties. And this is all being done because most things are still being done because of a religious book. Modern respect for wisdom and truth is but the recent escape from the fetish-making tendency up to the higher levels of thinking and reasoning. Concerning the accumulated fetish writings which various religionists hold as, between quotation marks, sacred books. Are they so sacred? No, they're not. Totally not. It is not only believed that what is in the book is true. And this is exactly why it is so difficult for religionists and very religious people that have been spoon-fed with a fear-mongering book written by men and by men declared, by men themselves declared as holy, and that book is far from holy. And all these apocryphal books and pseudo-apocryphal books, they are not holy books at all. And that is why religionists have difficulties with this fifth epochal revelation in the form of the Urantia book, because they have blinded themselves and locked and imprisoned their soul in such a way that they are not open to say, let me see. What can I learn from this book, from this Urantia book? No, they are staying stuck because they do not see that they have imprisoned their soul in this false belief that the Bible and all these apocryphal and pseudo-apocryphal books are the so-called Word of God, which is in no way, shape or form the Word of God at all. But the Bible has a huge level of confusion in it. God is not a God of confusion. The Bible contains a lot of distortions, incorrectness, incompleteness, and everything that the Urantia book is describing should have been in the Bible, but is not the case. They give an incorrect image of Jesus. The whole the earth part of Jesus is never mentioned in the Bible. Paul was never an apostle of Jesus. He only knew Jesus through Simon Peter, that's it. He never contacted Jesus, he never met Jesus. Better said, Paul was not even clever enough to make the connection between the man at the cross and the scribe of Damascus, as Jesus also was named. And that what is written about Jesus in the Bible is distorted, is incomplete, and gives a complete wrong image about Jesus. If one of these so-called sacred books happens to speak of the earth as being flat, then for long generations otherwise sane men and women will refuse to accept positive evidence that the planet is round. And this is so, because all these people that are so completely stuck onto these religious, better said, onto these so-called sacred books, religionists claim that the Bible is the high standard. How can you say that over a book that has been so many uncountable times being re-edited? If it truly was the Word of God, why should humanity then re-edit such a book? As soon as they know a new generation is coming up, bam, the Bible is being taken underhand, things are being taken out or added to it, or more twistings are being placed in it. How can you call that book a high standard and say that what is in that book is the truth and nothing but the truth? No, it's not. There's even, if you really are reading the Old Testament very clearly, you can also read a hate against women. That's not of God. God God is not hating women. Why should he? Because they are his creation. Why should God have a hate against his own creation? That doesn't make any sense. Let alone the simplistic story about the creation of the earth. How is it that so many people are so blind in blindly believing that version? How can you be so blind to take that version of creation as for truth? How can you be so blind to take that what is written about Adam and Eve as the truth, as is now also stated in the Urantia book, that the whole story of Adam and Eve is not what the Bible is describing? And I see it in the comments that many people have difficulties with this information coming from the Urantia book. And I see exactly who is a very strong religious people. Because the religious people, they write comments such as the Bible is the book and only the book. If you write such a comment on an audio video that has been uploaded, then you have not understood what you were listening. Better said, you did not open up your heart, soul and mind to new information, because you are so stubborn and stiff-necked, and you refuse to allow yourselves to embrace new insights. And that's the whole point with religious people. They have blinded themselves, they have imprisoned their souls, they do not allow to open their heart, mind and soul for new information, for new insights that give new levels of understanding life, this planet, and themselves. And then you are literally avoiding spiritual growth. The practice of opening one of these so-called sacred books to let the eye chance upon a passage, the following of which may determine important life decisions or projects, is nothing more nor less than errant fetishism. We need to follow the example of Jesus. Jesus has taught us, well, the people in his in the time of his day and age, when he, Michael of Nebadon, walked here on earth. What he did, if he had a problem, then he went out into nature and searched for himself a quiet place, and then he went into direct communication with the Paradise Father, whom we better know as God the Father. This is something we need to do too. But what is the majority? What is the majority of religious people doing when they have a problem, when they stand for a big decision? They are running to the bookshelf, take the Bible out and scroll through it to see a passage. They are reciting that for as long as that is needed, and all of a sudden they have the idea that their problem is solved, or that they have an answer on their life, crucial life decision that they were standing for. Then you are not communicating with God himself. You are communicating with words on a piece of paper. That is not communicating with God. That is why God the Father is constantly saying we need to grow beyond all these so-called sacred books. We need to let go of the Bible. We need to let go of each and every so-called by men proclaimed holy and sacred books. And if the Father guides you to one of them and is guiding you to a specific chapter, that's because he then knows that in that chapter or in that piece of text is a high spiritual truth hidden. But that's not often. All the time that I have the Bible at the shelf, a few times God guided me to that book to read me something out of the book, and most of the times it was coming from Proverbs or Psalms, not even the other books. So the practice of opening one of these sacred books to let the eye chance upon a passage, the following of which may determine important life decisions or projects, is nothing more nor less than errant fetishism. To take an oath, which is also done in the justice system and by presidents, ministers and prime ministers, and if you are standing before in front of the judge, this laying of your hand to take an oath on a so-called holy book, or to swear by some object of supreme veneration, is nothing more than a form of refined fetishism. But it does represent real evolutionary progress to advance from the fetish fear of a savage chief's fingernail trimmings to the adoration of a superb collection of letters, laws, legends, allegories, myths, poems, and chronicles, which, after all, reflect the renowned moral wisdom of many centuries, at least up to the time and event of their being assembled as a, between quotation marks, sacred book. And then to become fetishes, words had to be considered inspired, so men themselves one day decided to see words as something holy, and so they considered words as such. Words had to be considered inspired, and the invocation of supposed divinely inspired writings led directly to the establishment of the, and here it comes, authority of the Church, while the evolution of civil forms led to the fruition of the authority of the state. And then 3, totemism. Fetishism ran through all the primitive cults, from the earliest belief in sacred stones through idolatry, cannibalism, and nature worship to totemism. Totemism is a combination of social and religious observances. Originally, it was thought that respect for the totem animal of supposed biologic origin ensured the food supply. Totems were at one and the same time symbols of the group and their so-called god. Such a so-called god was the clan personified. Totemism was one phase of the attempted socialization of otherwise personal religion. The totem eventually evolved into the flag. So now we know why nations have a flag. The flag is the nation's totem. or national symbol of the various modern peoples. Civilized peoples in the 20th century see to it that their flags, emblems of national consciousness, likewise never touch the ground. The insignia of priestly and kingly offices were eventually regarded as fetishes, and the fetish of the state supreme has passed through many stages of development, from clans to tribes, from suzerainty to sovereignty, from totems to flags. Fetish kings have ruled by so-called, between quotation marks, divine right, and many other forms of government have obtained. Men have also made a fetish of democracy, the exaltation and adoration of the common man's ideas when collectively called, between quotation marks, public opinion. One man's opinion, when taken by itself, is not regarded as worth much, but when many men are collectively functioning as a democracy, this same mediocre judgment is held to the arbiter of justice and the standard of righteousness. 4. Magic. Civilized man attacks the problems of a real environment through his science. Savage man attempted to solve the real problems of an illusory ghost environment by magic. Magic was the teaching, better said, magic was the technique of manipulating the conjectured spirit environment whose imaginations endlessly explained the inexplicable. It was the art of obtaining a voluntary spirit cooperation and of coercing involuntary spirit aid through the use of fetishes or other and more powerful spirits. The object of magic, sorcery, and and necromancy was twofold. One, to secure insight into the future, and two, favorably to influence environment. Man is gradually backing into the truth, beginning in error, progressing in error, and finally attaining the threshold of truth. Only with the arrival of scientific method has he faced forward, but primitive men had to experiment or perish. The fascination of early superstition was the mother of the later scientific curiosity. There was progressiveness and there was progressive dynamic emotion, fear plus curiosity in these primitive superstitions. There was progressive driving power in the olden magic. These superstitions represented the emergence of the human desire to know and to control planetary environment. Magic gained such a stronghold upon the savage because he could not grasp the concept of natural death. He believes that an enemy can actually be killed by practicing sorcery on his shingled hair or fingernail trimmings. The fatality of snake bites was attributed to the magic of sorcerer. The difficulty in combating magic arises from the act that fear can kill. Primitive people so feared magic that it did actually kill. and such results were sufficient to substantiate this erroneous belief. In case of failure, there was always some plausible explanation. The cure for defective magic was more magic. 5. Magical charms. Since anything connected with the body could become a fetish, the earliest magic had to do with hair and nails. Secrecy attended upon body elimination grew up out of fear that an enemy might get possession of something derived from the body and employ it in detrimental magic. All excreta of the body were therefore carefully buried. Public spitting was refrained from because of the therefore carefully buried. Public spitting was refrained from because of the fear that saliva would be used in deleterious magic. Spittle was always covered. Even food remnants, clothing, and ornaments could become instruments of magic. The savage never left any remnants of his meal on the table. And all this was done through fear that one's enemies might use these things in magical rites. And all these things were done, that means through fear that one's enemies might use these things in magical rites, not from any appreciation of the hygienic value of such practices. So magical charms were concocted from a great variety of things: human flesh, tiger claws, crocodile teeth, poison plant seeds, snake venom, and human hair. The bones of the dead were very magical. Even the dust from the footprints could be used in magic. The ancients were great believers in love charms. Blood and other forms of bodily secretions were able to ensure the magic. Influences of love. Images were supposed to be effective in magic. Effigies were made, and when treated ill or well, the same effects were believed to rest upon the real person. When making purchases, superstitious persons would chew a bit of hard wood in order to soften the heart of the seller. The milk of a black cow was highly magical, so also were black cats. The staff or wand was magical, along with drums, bells, and knots. Primitive man believed that names must be treated with respect, especially the names of the so-called gods. The name was regarded as an entity, an influence distinct from the physical personality. It was esteemed equally with the soul and the shadow. Names were pawned for loans. A man could not use his name until it had been redeemed by payment of the loan. Nowadays, one science is named to a node. An individual's name soon became important in magic. The savage had two names. The important one was regarded as too sacred to use on ordinary occasions. The savage could get a new name by buying it from the tribal chief. Men still invest in titles and degrees. So this is all part of ghost cult. And the fear in bad luck and good luck. So titles and degrees are part of this magical charms. So we need to stop all this nonsense. Who cares if you are a philosopher, a doctor, whatever? You are just God's child. That's what you are. This title and degree says nothing. It's just a title, just by men created and by men themselves wholly declared thing. It has nothing to do with you being a child of God. God doesn't do titles, he doesn't do degrees, he doesn't care about that. But among the most primitive tribes, such as the African Bushmen, individual names do not exist. And then last point 6, the practice of magic. Magic was practiced through the use of wands, between quotation marks, medicine ritual and incantations, and it was customary for the practitioner to work unclothed. Women outnumbered the men among primitive magicians. In magic, between quotation marks, medicine means mystery, not treatment. And the voodoo doctors of the 20th century are typical of the magicians of old. The concept of dual spiritism, good and bad spirits, gave rise to the enemies. The concept of dual spiritism, good and bad spirits, gave rise to the later beliefs in white and black magic. That is the sentence. And as religion evolved, magic was the term applied to spirit operations outside one's own cult, and it also reverted to older ghosts beliefs. And it also reverted to older ghost beliefs. Word combinations, the ritual of chants and incantations were highly magical. Some early incantations finally evolved into prayers. Presently imitative magic was practiced. Prayers were acted out. Magical dances were nothing but dramatic prayers. Prayer gradually displaced magic as the associate of sacrifice, gesture being older than speech was the more holy and magical, and mimicry was believed to have strong magical power. The red men often staged a buffalo dance in which one of their number would play the part of a buffalo, and in being caught would ensure the success of the impending hunt. And then the sex festivities on and off May Day were simply imitative magic, a suggestive appeal to the sex passions of the plant world. The doll was first employed as a magic talisman by the barren wife. Magic was the branch of the evolutionary religious tree, which eventually bore the fruit of a scientific age. Belief in astrology led to the development of astronomy. Belief in a philosopher's stone led to the mastery of metals, while belief in magic numbers founded the science of mathematics. But a world so filled with charms did much to destroy all personal ambition and initiative. The fruits of extra labor of diligence were looked upon as magical. Gradually, science is removing the gambling element from life, but if modern methods of education should fail, there would be an almost immediate reversion to the primitive beliefs in magic. These superstitions still linger in the minds of many so-called civilized people. Language contains many fossils which testify that the race has long been steeped in magical superstition. Such words as spellbound, ill-starred, possessions, inspiration, spirit away, ingenuity, entrancing, thunderstruck, and astonished. And intelligent human beings still believe in good luck, the evil eye, and astrology. And so we may let go of all these things. We don't have to believe in an evil eye anymore, nor in other things as good luck and astrology. Ancient magic was the cocoon of modern science, indispensable in its time, but now no longer useful. And so the phantasms of ignorant superstition agitated the primitive minds of men until the concepts of science could be born. Today, Urantia is in the twilight zone of this intellectual evolution. One half the world is grasping eagerly for the light of truth and the facts of scientific discovery, while the other half languishes in the arms of ancient superstition and but thinly disguised magic. And with this said, I have come to the end of reading paper 88. All the information has been presented to us by a marvelous, brilliant evening star of Nebadon. And thank you so much, brilliant evening star of Nebadon, for giving us all this information so that we now finally can understand why we do the things as we do nowadays still. So thank you so much. And I also want to say to all of you who have listened to this audio video, thank you so much and God bless you.